Hey y'all, if you've been considering purchasing a short-term rental property here along the Emerald Coast, stick around. This is going to be a very informative video for you. So welcome back to Life on 30A. I'm AJ Baduke, your trusted 30A realtor right here on 30A with the luxury division of the Emerald Group. So I really want to speak to those people that are kind of on the fence, maybe waiting for the election to happen, maybe someone who's new to short-term rentals or specifically short-term rental investing here on 30A or just the Emerald Coast in general. So I've kind of worked out this cool deal with this great short-term rental specialist. He's a property manager out here. His name is Michael Hilton, or Helton, I'm sorry. I never call him by his last name, so I might be butchering that, but I think it's Michael Hilton. And we're going to put his name up here. He's with Vacasa, and he agreed to kind of bounce ideas back and forth with me so that I had the best information to impart to y'all whenever you're considering purchasing a short-term rental here along the coast or in 30A. So definitely going to share his information in case you do decide that you want to purchase. I'm happy to help you purchase, and then he can manage the property for you. A very kind of a very efficient way to do things, and I am OCD about efficiency. So let's talk about some of the things that you really want to be considering, both for how to finance or what financial things you need to be considering whenever you're looking at a property, and then also best practices to make sure that once you actually own that property, it's going to rent out for the most amount possible so that you actually get a return on your investment, which is ultimately the point of purchasing a rental property, right? So let's get into it a bit. Whenever you're considering purchasing and you're getting these numbers pertaining to past or historic revenue from a property, it's important to be aware of how much of that is actually going to go into your pocket at the end of the day, because we can get gross numbers all day long, right? And say, hey, at the end of the year, the seller or current owner, they received X amount of dollars. Well, that's great, but how much of that money went towards HOA dues, towards utilities, towards maintenance, towards repairs, towards taxes, towards insurance, towards, rental things that they've got accompanying the property? A lot of these properties, they're going to have a rental golf cart or something worked out so that there are beach chairs associated that are paid in advance. All of these different amounts that really add up significantly when it comes to figuring out the actual profit of the property itself. So make sure whenever you are looking at properties, you're not just running the numbers against, how much are you getting by the end of the year, but how much are you spending so that you know what that net is going to be to you, your actual profit margin. Something else that you want to consider whenever you're looking at a property, speaking of HOAs, you want to know what is it that is currently being paid for with the HOA? How much of the dues are actually being paid by all of the owners? How good is the standing of that HOA? Is everybody paying their fees? Have the milestone inspections already been conducted? Have any special assessments kind of started becoming in the works? Are there any litigations going on? Is there a projected, project facility? So these are things to know about because it could result in a special assessment. So your HOA fees, and I apologize if some of y'all are old hat to this and you're like, yeah, AJ, we know about HOA fees, but for those of you that don't, this is good information for you to know. So we're going to go through it anyways. HOA fees, those are going to be your standard HOA fees that you pay monthly, quarterly, yearly, however it is broken down. And you need to know what those cover, because if you're imagining or factoring in utilities that you're going to have to pay in addition to the HOA fees, that might put you outside of the realm of making profit, which might have you overlook a property if you didn't know that HOA was actually covering a lot of those utilities. I feel like I said that really poorly, but basically it's important to know what the HOA fees actually cover so that your math is accurate when you're trying to figure out whether a property is going to be profitable or not. So now HOA fees are different from special assessments. HOA fees are something that you can expect you're going to continue to pay onward and forward until they go up. Typically they don't go down. Sometimes they do, but most of the time they don't. So you need to project that you're going to be paying at least what is currently notated as the HOA fees. if not more. Special assessments are, one-time things. They particularly, they have to do with instances where more money is needed by the project for the betterment of the entire complex. So if, everybody's balconies need to be redone, there isn't going to be enough funds held back in reserves by the HOA to just cover that. So everyone's going to see a special assessment because it's going to be a one-time fee to cover all of the cost of replacing all of those balconies. You can see a special assessment that is broken down. So say if there's a $80,000 assessment, I saw this happen, so that's why I'm using this number, and that's per unit. If you see that, then typically it's going to be spread out throughout a specific amount of time. You're going to have to pay so much so frequently, whether that be quarterly for a while, every few months, or if it's yearly, or you can pay it in advance, however it is. So it's important to really understand what's going on with the HOA before considering a property. You want to do all of this legwork before going to actually set foot in a property. If your main goal is to make money, you don't want to fall emotionally in love with a property that is just going to burn a hole in your pocket, because you might love it for 5 minutes, but as you consistently see your bank account dwindling, you're not going to love it so much. So when you're working with me, for instance, I send out a spreadsheet that shows, hey, these are the properties that are making money. And that's all we're going to consider, unless you're telling me this is a short-term rental, but it's also a second home. And the emphasis is more on second home than it is on making money. Then it's a completely different conversation. So just keep that in mind. Where are your priorities, and make sure that you understand what those priorities are before you start your search. It's very important so that you don't end up super stressed out because you're having to make decisions after you've already been in properties. It has a tendency to mess with your emotions. Something else to consider when you're looking at short-term rentals or investment properties in general, it doesn't necessarily have to be a short-term rental. It could be a long-term rental, 6 months, a year, something like that. This is mostly about short-term rentals, but this next item is going to pertain to both. So something to consider is that your income is going to come in one of two forms with your investment. It's either going to come as that net income that you're receiving from tenants or a tenant, or it's going to come in the form of equity. In either case, I like to look at real estate as kind of a stock market type deal. You really need to be in it for the long haul. There are some instances where you can flip properties very quickly and make money, but there's a very specific market for that, right? If you're looking at investing in a property to own and rent out and also gain equity in, that needs to be a longer hold. For one thing, it's going to benefit you tax-wise, and for another thing, you're just going to make more. So you need to be ready to have, dips and gains throughout the short-term rental process, and understand that some seasons are going to be significantly better than others. Which brings me to my next tip. I know I said that you really need to look at the numbers on a property if that is your priority, but you also want to like the property, or at a minimum the area, because when those dips happen, it's really easy to feel like, man, this was a mistake. This was a huge mistake. I bought this property. It's not making any money. It hasn't made any money in 6 months. Like, man, I just hate it. I don't know what to do. I feel stuck, But if you love that property because of the location and you're able to use it and you can look forward to a vacation in that unit, it really helps alleviate a lot of that, because again, real estate is kind of like the stock market. You're going to see, lows and highs, and you need to be prepared for them. So it just kind of helps, first look at the money side of it, make sure it's something that's going to make money, and then pick the one that you like the most and love the area secondary, so that you still have that to fall on, right? It just kind of helps everything across the board. Okay, now that we've talked about how to select the actual property, let's talk about what to do after you've actually got that property. You closed on it, you got the keys, all the future bookings are yours, and you want to make sure that you get, super host across the board. So One of the top things that you want to do is make it feel as much like a home as possible. Not like grandma's home that you're going and you're going to get treats and stuff, but like a very clean home. That is one of the biggest things. I can tell you, even when I look to book my Airbnbs or short-term rentals elsewhere, I'm looking for cleanliness. I once had this horrible stay. I booked a hotel that looked really cute. I was so excited about all the amenities. I was going to visit my mom, and I booked this hotel, and my sister was staying with me. She was going to visit, and we were just exhausted. I get there, and while it resembled the pictures, it was absolutely misrepresented in the pictures. Everything was smaller. There were bars on the windows. It was not a safe location, which I never would have chosen. And then we get into the actual room, and while it did somewhat, it was, the room that they took pictures of, but it had been misrepresented in the pictures by far. And there were bed bugs. So we got out of there. It was something like 2:00 in the morning. We had gotten there super late from driving in. I don't know, traffic was a thing, but it was absolutely horrific. And so now I'm so crazy about looking at every picture. I'm looking at the beds. Are there clean surfaces? What's the decor look like? Does the furniture look like it could very easily house bed bugs, things of that nature? So something to really consider whenever you are furnishing your property is to make sure that it is something that looks clean. When you take pictures, you want to make sure that it's bright. You don't want dim photos. You want everything to look bright and clean in every single photo. You also want to take the most visually stimulating photo and make that one your first one. You don't want someone to just skip your listing entirely because your first photo wasn't pretty enough. So make sure that it's something that stands out and incorporates some amenities. If you have one, like a golf cart, you can absolutely put that in the front and show the property behind it. If you've got a golf cart and you're super close to the beach, maybe use a drone photo for the next one. You really want to catch people's eyes. So one thing is, everybody, we kind of eat with our eyes first, right? You know that if you go to a restaurant and you get served your meal and it might be delicious, but it looks like someone just slopped everything onto your plate without a care. You're like, you're not thinking it's going to be delicious, right? I'm like, gosh, I could have cooked something better at home for less money and would have been happy to clean up after the fact. So that's not the impression that you want to give future tenants to your listing. You want that most visually stimulating and beautiful picture up front. And you want all of the following pictures to show an accurate portrayal of what the property is going to look like when they get there. Moving on to accuracy. You might think, okay, yeah, there's this one little issue with my unit that people might not like, but if I just don't talk about it, then everything will be fine. No, you need straight transparency. The fastest way to get a negative review is to make something unclear or to hide something. And people are far more prone to leave negative reviews than they are good reviews, because it just creates a bigger emotional impact for an individual. You have an absolutely horrific time. You want to tell everybody about it. You're like, I have a civic duty to warn people against this horrible thing. I don't want anyone else suffering the way I have, as opposed to, oh my gosh, I had this great experience. This is so cool. I might tell my friends, but I'm not going to leave a review. So it's very important to make sure that you don't give anyone a reason to leave a negative review. Part of the way that you avoid that is in each of your listings, not each of your listings, but this will be true for them if you have multiple. Everywhere your listing is marketed. So if you're on Airbnb and you're on VRBO and you're on the MLS, you want the same verbiage to be on each platform. You want it all to be the same. You don't want people to have to dig across multiple platforms to find all of the information. And they should know that they're looking at the exact same property on each platform. It shouldn't be, incognito anywhere. Another thing to do is look, if yours is kind of a newer property hitting the market, look at properties that are, I hate to say it, but your competition, that are similar to yours. What do their keywords look like and kind of mirror them. You want to make sure you're attracting the right audience. So someone who's been doing it a lot longer. I hate to say it was called rip off and duplicate. You know, you don't want to copy someone completely verbatim, but looking at keywords is very important. This is something that Michael's really great at for marketing properties. They know what the keywords are. They know what people are typing in whenever they're trying to find their next vacation home. So very important to keep that in mind. When you are describing what a visit is going to be like at your property, it's important to be as clear as possible. List all of the amenities like you are talking to someone who has never visited your area before. If you want to include maps and pictures with like doodles on them that show exactly where someone's going to go to access the amenities, provide directions to any place that they might want to go, provide instructions for how they would access certain things. You know, if there's a washer and dryer in the unit, make sure they're easy to understand instructions if you're giving them access to that. Same thing for a dishwasher. Same thing if your property is on a septic system versus sewer, and so they need to be mindful of what they flush down the toilet. All of these things, it's important to anticipate that the tenant that is going to stay in your property knows absolutely nothing. And just go in there with that mindset, not because they don't, but for the most part, they might not. And it's better to just have that full transparency and completely help people so that they understand everything right off the bat. If you've got a property with a key code to enter, make sure you say exactly how do you enter the code, and do you have to click the check? Do you have to press on the check mark right after it? To lock the door, do you have to lift up on the handle and then spin it and then, put the handle down? Here on 38, we have some weird doors. I'm just going to say it, okay? And, going out to the pools, you have to push the button before you can open the door. All of these things are not second nature to people that have never been here before. And you might get, lucky enough to have people come into the area that have experienced this before, and it's old hat to them. They know what they're doing. But you need to be prepared for the ones that didn't. The ones that this is going to be their first time, and their mind is going to be blown by how amazing your property is. When I talk about being super clear, I really want to talk about, golf carts and beach accesses. So we know that there are specific areas that allow golf carts and specific areas that don't. We see so many golf carts on 98, and it's incredibly illegal and incredibly dangerous. People are just putting their lives, their children's lives, and other drivers' lives at stake because they just don't know that that's illegal. They can't do it. So it's important to indicate, both in writing and maybe also on a map, because you don't know how it's kind of like teaching different learning styles. You want to make sure that it is completely crystal clear to everybody on all levels. Where can they use the golf cart? And then also for the beach accesses, we have all this drama right now with the privatization of the beaches and customary use going away. It is more important now than it ever has been to specifically indicate which beaches are the closest and which areas can be used. And then if you have a rental umbrella and chair service, is it already paid for? Do they need to bring items? Do they need to pay in advance? Do they need to call in advance? Who do they need to call? All of these things need to be completely crystal clear. Also incorporate, what do the flags mean? Should you go out in the water at this flag? What should you expect these different flags? What happens in the case of a tornado warning? Where should they go in the property? What happens in the case of a hurricane during their visit? All of these things need to be completely spelled out and easily accessed in a user-friendly manner for each guest. One surefire way to really impress a tenant is to reach out to them right at checkout time or right after they've checked out. Maybe you've got a Ring doorbell on the property, or you get a notification that says so-and-so has accessed the property, something like that. If you can have a scheduled text, or you just send it out organically that, welcomes the tenant and says, hey, how's everything so far? Do you have any questions? Is there anything I can help you with? Letting them know that you are available right off the bat at the start of their vacation just helps to put people at ease. They're like, okay, I'm not doing this alone. If I have questions, even if I think it's a silly question, I have someone that I can directly communicate with that is going to alleviate any dramas for me. And the best way to do this is going to be via text. Okay, if you're doing it via an app, that's great, but they don't come through as reliably or as quickly or with the same for sure notification as a text message. So definitely consider implementing something like this, whether you already have a property that you're renting out or for a future property that you intend to rent out. Making that text message, super easy for the tenant. Maybe you can say, hey, let me know, like, A, did you have an easy time getting in? B, did you have difficulty with the lock? C, do you have any questions? Something like that. Something where they can very easily just indicate something super fast. They don't have to put a lot of brain power into it. They don't have to type out a paragraph. Just kind of do some pre-filled items to make everything as easy as possible. And then towards the end of the stay, ask again, how was everything? Did everything meet your expectations? Is there anything that we should know? And if everything is great, hey, how would you like to book your upcoming stay? Because the best time to book a future stay is at the end of one stay. And that's how you get repeat clientele. Not only is it great to have something already on the books for 6 months to a year in advance, but it also looks good on your listing if while it's being advertised, people can see that it's already got bookings in the future. Like, how great is that? It's already got bookings. And when you have those repeat clients, they tend to feel a sort of possession or ownership over a property. And so they take better care of it. Who doesn't want their property taken care of in their absence? Like, that's fantastic. All wins. So make sure that you are helping the tenant fully understand the property and their amenities. Reach out to make sure that you are available and they don't have any questions about anything, and then ask them for that repeat business. It's going to help you so much in the long run. Moving on to the actual setup of your property, make sure that your floor plan has a nice flow to it. You don't want someone to come in and be like, yeah, there are just beds everywhere. We just sleep in these beds. Here in Walton County, you can have a person for up to 150 square feet, but that doesn't mean that you should. Also consider the parking situation. If your property is so big that it can house 20 people, you need to make sure that it can also facilitate a bunch of vehicles, right? Nobody wants to fight for parking at the location where they're staying. What if they're all driving in the middle of the night? Last thing they want to do is go fight for parking when all they want to do is unload and get some sleep. So make sure that that ratio of people to beds also considers the parking situation. And then furthermore, when it comes to actual decor, we're seeing that less is more. A very tasteful but clean atmosphere and some minimal, some like beach signs or some beautiful photos, of, the landscape, things of that nature. But going completely wild, stuff everywhere, lots of energy, signs all over the place, and just random stuff, it kind of gives a dirty feel to it. All that clutter can collect dust, and just in our energies, we can just see that. Like, oh my gosh, it's too much. I came here to relax. So you want to really impart that feeling of relaxation whenever you are designing these properties. So you want comfort, relaxation, cleanliness, and clear instructions of the amenities. And before I forget, don't forget comfort, because I went to this beautiful Airbnb just a couple months ago, and it looked very clean, and it was absolutely beautiful. They had redone everything. There was water access. It was very well portrayed in the listing. However, those beds were quite possibly the most uncomfortable beds I've ever been on. It might have been an air mattress. It literally might have been an air mattress on a metal frame. I didn't look because I really didn't want to confirm it. They were so sweet. Everything else about the property was fantastic, but those beds, holy cow. And the pillows, I will never forget, the pillows were so uncomfortable. I'm one of those people that I have to bring my pillow with me anywhere I go. Like, no, I need my pillow. And I didn't bring it. I forgot it. And I paid for that. I barely slept that entire trip. And I could have if the pillows had been just even slightly more comfortable, but it was horrible. So make sure comfort is in there as well. That's about all I have for you guys on short-term rentals. If you have any questions about investing in the area, what locations are going up in value, which ones are having dramas, what's going on, all of my contact information is on the screen. And if you haven't done so, please hit that subscribe button and ding the bell so that you get notified every time I do another video. And if you're the type that needs to see some proof like AJ really does know her stuff, here's a link. We'll put it over here maybe to all of our Google reviews here at the Emerald Group. And I will see y'all at the next one. Bye, y'all.